He loved magic. And one day, over Christmas break, I took him and his brother Tyler, his older brother, and their friend Carl, I took them to Universal Studios, where they have the Wizarding World of Harry Potter, where magic comes to life.
I love it!
We had a great day. We got chocolate frogs from Honey Dukes. We browsed the wand selection at Ollivander's. We drank these big frothy mugs of butterbeer. We had an amazing magical day, and we were just leaving the park when we heard a voice calling out, "Hurry, hurry, hurry, ladies and gentlemen, step right this way. Time's a-wasting, the show starts in 5 minutes." We looked up and there was a man standing there with a great big sandwich board sign, and on it were the words "Magic Show." And there was a cartoon hand pointing down an alleyway to this little building set back with yellow light spilling out of it. Well, we were ushered down that alley and into that little yellow lit theater. And I looked up on the stage. There was a magician's black box on wheels. And standing next to it was the magician. He was young, in his 20s, and he had this cool side-swept hair. And when all of the seats were filled, he began his spiel. He said, "Ladies and gentlemen, you all are in for a treat. For tonight, I'm going to demonstrate the Levitator. It's the greatest levitation device ever invented. And the real treat is that after the show, you will all have a chance to purchase this trick as you exit the theater." And suddenly I realized that we had somehow wandered into an infomercial. The magician, he reached into his pocket and he pulled out an ordinary playing card. He raised it up so that we could see. It was just a card. And then he held it in front of him and he gave it a flip. And it didn't flutter to the ground like we expected. Instead, it levitated there in front of him. He moved his hand all around and that card followed. And I felt Jack's hand on my arm, and he said, "I want that more." Now, he had brought his money. It was his Christmas money, $40, and it was in his back pocket. It was an 11-year-old's fortune. And when the show was over, he was so excited. He said, "I bet it's magnets. Tyler, don't you think it's probably magnets?" And Tyler said, "It could be. Or maybe it's a blower," Jack said. "I bet he's got a little blower tucked in his sleeve and a tuft of air comes out and moves that card around." And then he said, "Although that would be really hard to control." And Carl said, "I don't know what it is, but it sure is cool." Now, as we exited the theater, of course, they routed us right through the gift shop, displaying on the shelves the featured tricks in these little cellophane-wrapped packages. And then we saw it. In grand lettering, the box announced the Levitator. And there was a picture of a spinning card on the cover, and then a disembodied hand on either side. And along the bottom, it said, "The greatest levitation device ever invented." We stopped at the counter. "How much is the Levitator?" There was a man perched on a stool behind the register, and he looked up and said, "The Levitator? It's $39.95. And Jack was tugging on my arm again, and he said, "I really, really want it, Mom." Now, here was my dilemma. I knew that whatever was in that box, it wasn't a floating car. I knew that because I'm a grown-up, and years of life experience and a couple of high school science classes taught me that things don't float around on their own. But in Jack's 11-year-old brain, he was convinced there was something in that box that could defy gravity. And I had two choices. I could say yes to this box of potential disappointment, or I could say no, and Jack would forever remember the time that Mom wouldn't let him get the Levitator. Tyler reached over and said, listen, Jack, I'll tell you what, I kind of like to know how that works too. So Mom, if I go in on it with him, would that be okay? And Jack, he said, yeah, then I don't have to spend all my money. And Carl said, I'd kind of like to know how that works too. So I'll tell you what, and he reached into his wallet and pulled out $4. Carl and Tyler, they pooled their money with Jack, and then all three of those boys looked at me. And 10 minutes later, we were the proud owners of a cellophane-wrapped package that contained all the wonders of the Levitator. Now, when we got home, those boys, they gathered around the kitchen table, they flipped the light on, and they tore the cellophane off of that package and dumped the contents onto the table. Inside, there was a folded cardboard supply wallet, which they flipped open, and then they scanned its contents, looking for magnets or a motor or some other magical contraption. And what they found inside was... Magicians have this rule. You may know it. It is that a magician never reveals his secrets. And I'm about to break that rule. So, now is the time to cover your ears if you don't want to know, because I'm about to reveal the secret of the Levitator. What Jack and Tyler and Carl saw inside that folded cardboard supply wallet were three things. First, there was a single blue-backed playing card. There was another card that had been cut in half and notched at either end. And stuck in one of those notches and wound around that half of a playing card was this thick, black, yarn-like thread. And there was an instructional DVD. It got really quiet and still in the kitchen. We all stood watching Jack. And then Jack, he looked up at me, his face reddening with disappointment. And he said, "It's thread, Mom." And then he said, "We just paid $39.95 for some thread." And we all stood and took on his disappointment. And then Tyler said, "Listen, buddy, let's have a look at the video." And so he put the video in the player, and the magician's face appeared. He demonstrated the trick, and then he showed us how to prepare the cards and perform it ourselves. And in a flash, those boys had tumbled back over to the table, and they were measuring and cutting and taping and preparing their own cards and trying the trick themselves. And later that evening, cards were floating all over my living room. And Jack was really good at this trick. He stood in the middle of the living room, and he took a card, he held it up, and he said, "Mom, watch." And then he gave that card a flip, and it floated there. He moved his hand from one side to the other. He snatched it out of the air, and he said, "You know, the Levitator wasn't what I thought it was going to be, but it was still really cool." And that's the story of Jack and the Levitator.